Hello, BookTube. I tell you, there is nothing that this little tripod cannot do. This angle would have been unthinkable with the old haphazard arrangement that I have. $5 later, I have a tripod that can do literally anything. So, we are going to continue with my library tour. We are done with the bookcase on the other side of the room. All the rest of the stuff the shelf that I didn't show you is random miscellany that changes from minute to minute. There's no point in going over it. So we have crossed the room. Several of you pointed out on the other side of this tiny little room, you pointed out that over my shoulder you could see this white bookcase is topped with a ton of Norton anthologies, Norton critical editions and whatnot, and other stuff too. And I had intended to ignore this bookcase completely because most of it, the very top shelf, is a mixture of literature and stuff like that, but all the rest of it is romance. And I thought, there's Sarah at Steeped in Books, and how many other people will be even remotely interested in seeing my romance collection? It's rather large, not romance novels themselves, but particularly Regency romances, Signet Regency romances. I have a lot of them. My goal is to have this whole bookcase filled with them. Right now, it's not. Right now, the bottom shelf and a couple of sections in between have not normal, but modern Regency romances. The type that are not, you see, they're much thicker. They're far more suggestive. They're not Austen-esque. They're much rather adult, more modern, and they're not Signet. It's a little bit hard to explain. But most of this bookcase is that, and I am assuming that you do not want to see that. I'm still assuming that you don't want to see that. So right now I'm thinking that the most I will do from this bookcase is this top shelf of what so-called normal books, and that I'll just ignore the rest of it. If Sarah wants to know what I have in the way of romances, I can send her a list. Unless you tell me that you want to see all of these romances, in which case I will gladly comply. I won't natter on about them, because there's hundreds and hundreds of them. Instead, I'll just show you one cover after another. They're very colorful. They're very whimsical. You might enjoy that for 25 minutes, but I'm going to assume that you don't want that. So I'm just going to do this top shelf unless you tell me otherwise. And the top shelf has books stacked normally, and then books piled on top of them. And in this particular arrangement, there's no way I can get at the ones underneath them until I do the ones on top first. So I'm going to do them to start with. So this will be two parts. This will be a two-part thing here. And as I mentioned, most of the things on this top shelf are Norton critical editions. And we've seen them before on this channel. They are the text, a classic canonical text, followed by incredibly useful critical apparatus. Original reactions to the book, original reviews of the book, literary essays spanning however long the book has been in existence, hundreds, even thousands of years, plus tons of notes, tons of critical apparatus. They're just an amazing thing. They're meant for schools, but I have always loved them, as you're going to be able to tell, because there are a number of different iterations of them on this shelf. I have always loved them. They are absolutely fascinating. If you are interested, if there's some canonical work that you're interested in, say you love Othello, or Sun Tzu or something like that, and you want to read more about it than just one more edition after another, these things are incredible. No matter how well you know the canonical work, you're going to know it better when you're done with the Norton Critical Edition, and that's terrific. That's not just for students. This one is edited by Alexandra Lewis. This is Wuthering Heights. And then we have one of quite a few Shakespeares that I have. This one is edited by Peter Holm and William Sherman. This is The Tempest. Then we have, this is not Shakespeare. This is, I was delighted to get this, though. This is the Norton Critical Edition of the Seamus Heaney translation of Beowulf. The Beowulf is not all that much of this book, and then you have tons of critical stuff to put it in its context. Very useful for recondite work like Beowulf. Then we have Hamlet. That is Benedict Cumberbatch on the cover. But there is not the only Norton Critical Hamlet that we have. Then we have Penguin. This is an orange spine penguin of Aubrey's Brief Lives. This is an amazing work. I wish it were better known. Aubrey decided to write biographies of famous contemporaries and near contemporaries, and to get their help with it. And they're wonderful. his biographies are wonderful, and this edition is wonderful too. I should point this out because this edition is really noteworthy. This is Oliver Lawson Dick, who does the Penguin edition of Aubrey, and in addition to all the great notes and double checking Aubrey's facts and figures and all that, there's also the introductory essay, which is amazing, just amazing. It's long, and it's an incredible introduction to Aubrey and his world and his method. Just worth it on its own. I would have had this edition anyway, even if it didn't have Aubrey's Brief Lives in it, just for that essay. Okay, then we have a paperback of The Fellowship of the Ring. This is just a trade paperback, a normal trade paperback of The Fellowship of the Ring. I have many editions of Tolkien. I have many editions of Tolkien. I have many 1 volumes. I like them. I have many editions of all the individual books. This was, I think I got this because it was free. I think I got it. There's a charity shop that I think I got this at a place that was just a big box of books, and the sign was "Fill a bag." And I think I got this just because signs like that, "Fill a bag with books," make you giddy. they absolve you of judgment. So this is just it's the movie adaptation of Fellowship of the Ring. I made it a little special by peeling off the acetate cover, the acetate covering for the front, so that it doesn't have, it would have had J.R.R. Tolkien and then Fellowship of the Ring. It doesn't have anything like that. It's just a picture of 5-pack-a-day tobacco addict Elijah Wood. And I kind of like the way it looks. In fact, if this had been sold this way, I would have bought it for this at full price, not just fill a bag. Let's see here. Then we have Dickens. I'm not Dickens' biggest fan, even though he has a lot of real estate on my Penguin wall. This is A Tale of Two Cities, which I got as a Norton Critical Edition. It happens to be my favorite Dickens, so I was happy about that. Then we have The Prince. Never did a book need ancillary essays more than this one, and these are great. These are chosen fantastically. Then we have, this is not a Norton Critical Edition. This is Amish fiction. I often make fun of Amish fiction, but I do still read it. I don't understand the appeal of Amish fiction. I've tried to understand it, and I've asked romance people. I asked Sarah when she was here what the appeal of it is. I assume that the appeal is that it's a pre-modern society. I assume that part of the appeal is the same as the appeal of Viking romances, or especially Regency romances, which is that when you go into an Amish community, you're dealing with pre-modern ideas. No cell phones, no distractions from screens or whatnot. Just simple folk living clean, wholesome lives. I think that's the appeal that Amish fiction has to people who obviously have never experienced Amish communities. Because if you have experienced an Amish community, then you're not going to associate any kind of romance with it. Not at all. Because it's a whole package. It's not just that you get freedom from cell phones if you go back 200 years to the world where the Amish insist on living because of their collective psychoses. You also get rampant sexism, no hygiene, incredibly repressive family structures. I don't understand the appeal of that. And, of course, that doesn't have appeal. The way that Amish fiction writers get around it, and oh, believe you me, this is a thriving subgenre of romance. These people do well. The way they get around it is to pick and choose how they're going to portray these communities. And this is by Suzanne Woods Fisher. It's a Deacon's family novel. It's called Mending Fences. I actually don't have any idea why this one appealed to me, but it did. So I got it and I read it. I actually kind of sort of liked it. The main character, the main male character, is fallen. He is flawed. He has had problems with drink and drugs that have caused him to leave his Amish community many times. And he is portrayed with a certain amount of believable fallibility. But it's only believable because it's an intersection between the Amish world and the real world, with the modern world. That main character could easily step into the modern world. In fact, that's one of the reasons why he's looked with such suspicion by his Amish friends and family, because he is at least partly tainted, as they would say, by that outside world. I wanted to follow that character out into the outside world, and I wanted to say to him on almost every page, don't do it. Don't get stuck back here just because she's pretty. Go to Chicago and live like a normal person. Anyway, then we go back to the Norton Critical Editions. There will never be a Norton Critical Edition of Mending Fences, I predict. But here we have the Epic of Gilgamesh, which it was just an incredibly haunting cover. The way that the light shines like a penumbra on the monkey's fur, makes them seem quasi-human, which they are. And Gilgamesh is all about the nature of humanity, and one of its main characters is quasi-human. So I just loved it. I loved all the supporting material. Things like Gilgamesh and Beowulf, the supporting material becomes more important than ever, because the main work is not very big and is much contested. Okay, and then we have a Norton Critical. This is another Norton Critical edition. This is a big one, but it's not modern. It's an older Norton Critical edition that I just love. This is the who does this? The George Gibrian edition of War and Peace. The Norton Critical War and Peace. I have reinforced this a million times, but I don't think it's long for this world. Sooner or later, Norton will send me a new edition of War and Peace. Sooner or later, they will do it, and maybe it'll be the Peviar and Volkonsky translation. Maybe they'll have all sorts of new notes. War and Peace is another example of how it's so helpful to have those ancillary, all those essays and whatnot. Not necessarily in this case like with Gilgamesh or Beowulf, because the original is so fragmentary and so ambivalent, but because the original is so overwhelming that you want to get those essays under your belt, and especially the contemporary reactions. That's the most fascinating thing about something like War and Peace. It comes to us as such a block, like an iceberg, that we forget that it did have contemporary reactions. That when in the 1860s, people thought this was a new novel, and had all the reactions that book critics have about new novels, positive and negative. And it's enlightening to see that. So that is it. Those are the top books. That's the top layer, and we'll do the next shelf tomorrow. So and the next shelf, there's quite a few Norton Critical editions. I'm looking at it now, but there's quite a few other things too. So plenty to interest. So I will wrap this up for now, but we'll be back tomorrow for more of these things. Thank you, Book 2.